Welcome. We are talking politics and religion without killing each other. I'm your host, Corey Nathan. It is an honor to be a part of the Democracy Group, a network of podcasts that examines what's broken in our democracy and how we can work together to fix it. Of course, remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us, rate us, review us on your podcast app. Check out our new, not our new Substack, but we're newly publishing on an old Substack. So check that out. And we have links in the show notes to make all of this stuff easy to find. It all helps so we can continue having great conversations like the one we're having today with Liz Joyner. Liz Joyner is the founder and president of the Village Square, an organization she started almost 20 years ago, which has been building civic trust in American hometowns between people who don't look or think alike. She also serves on the board of the Heterodox Academy with our pal, John Roush. And the Heterodox Academy's mission is to advance open inquiry, viewpoint diversity, and constructive disagreement across higher education. But mostly, Liz is my very dear friend, and it's so good to see you, Liz. How you doing?
Great to be here, Corey. You are my favorite podcast, and that includes ours.
Oh, that's right. We do a podcast together.
We
Village
do.
Squarecast. You can hear us over there. But there are some great conversations over there. In fact, I kind of hijacked the John Haidt one and aired it on our feed, which was a lot of fun. I get to say I talked to John Haidt. He's one of our favorite sociologists. And you get to call Robert Putnam, who's been referenced almost as much as Jonathan Haidt on our show. You get to call him Bob. That's how awesome you are.
Yeah. Actually, those are the instructions for my tombstone. Can call Bob Putnam Bob.
I see. I thought it was special when I got to start calling Peter Wayner Pete and Jonathan Roush John. It's like, it's so cool. It's like a Hollywood thing, you know?
It is. It actually honestly has been one of the honors of my life. It really has, to have the opportunity in this work to meet some of my intellectual heroes.
Yeah.
And to get to know them well enough to, call them Bob, John, and Pete.
So if I ever get to the point where I can call David Brooks Brooksy and he doesn't give me the side eye, then I'll know I will have arrived. Like, but in all seriousness, like some of the, I think one of the coolest things about having done this program for now almost 5 years, it'll be 5 years in October, is that people whose work I've been studying and influenced by for decades are people that I now call sincere friends. You know, Pete will reach out to me occasionally. John and I get together every time I'm in DC. You and I have got to spend the day in DC just a couple of weeks ago. So
that was so fun. As soon as we parked, it was fun. Before we found a place to park, less fun.
That's right. We were stuck on that one side street. I'm like,
and there was like some big, huge shindig going on, right?
Yeah. It's a good thing I got my meditation in that day, because you would have totally seen like the New York, the kid who grew up learning how to drive on the New York City streets. Like, what the hell are you doing? What's going on over here? So anyway, talking about modeling the proper behavior for the Village Square, that would have been the best of me. So speaking of testing the best of us, Liz is a real hero because she has a house that's in all kinds of disarray. And so how's everything coming along? What happened to the house and how's it all coming along?
Yeah, so we were out of town doing a conference, and we had a plumbing hose in the upstairs master bathroom pop off, which is not a good thing. And something like 27,000 gallons of water poured through our house for a couple days while we were out of town.
Wow.
And then we came back, and ceilings had fallen in, and basically we lost half of our house. So now here, almost 9 months later, we're getting close to having a house that we can move
9
back
months.
to. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it does test your patience.
Oh, you know what? And you mentioned that you're staying with your dad here and there.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, my 91-year-old dad, he kind of kicks ass.
I was going to ask you about your dad. So did he work for Agnew when he was VP?
No, that was my best friend. That was sort of my dad 2.0.
Okay.
And my best friend's father was Agnew's press secretary.
Okay.
And fascinating man, had very different politics than my family did.
Okay.
And I went off to college, and my first poli-sci class, there was a book called Boys on the Bus, and one whole chapter is about my best friend's dad
Oh, wow.
screaming at the press corps.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great.
My own dad was a Navy pilot and
Oh,
then spent the rest of his career as a civilian working at the Pentagon in
okay.
anti-submarine warfare.
I am curious. And then your brother became a Navy SEAL. I'm
Navy
really
SEAL.
curious if you're having conversations with them about what's happening now. I know a lot of lifelong veterans and military leaders have pretty strong opinions about what's going on, but their training also compels them to, you know, uh, maybe keep it to themselves for the most part. So I'm curious if your brother or your dad have voiced opinions about what's happening these days.
Yeah, they do. And it's been I think that there's a silver lining somewhere in our conflict that goes something like this. And I think it's still unfolding. But I think that it is an opportunity to sort of come back around to what is really important, what we really believe to be true about, who the country we live in is and what our values are. And so I would say that my family it is politically diverse, but I think that we're all um, patriots, servants,
Yeah.
again, my whole family sort of served in governmental roles. And so I think that we all think that we're in a time of extraordinary crisis.
Mm.
And my brother taught ethics at the Naval Academy, and
Oh,
actually I'll have to look up the name of it maybe, but he started, he has been writing things and to sort of I don't know, help put some form around what the ethical issues are in terms of how the military responds to civilian leadership and things like that. And so we just kept saying, this really should be out there somewhere. So he started a Substack, and he's been writing, and he has lots of politically diverse colleagues that he's writing to and is getting
yeah.
responses from. So
What's his Substack? I'd love to check it out.
I will look it up because
Okay.
yeah, I'll look it
Yeah,
up and I'll come back around and let you know what it is.
that'd be
Um,
great.
but his name is Roger Herbert, and I'm sure that you could probably find it that way.
Yeah.
Um, and I also think that kind of the one of the silver linings in all this too, think of the number of people who have changed their lives, who have just dropped what they were doing and changed their lives to put their shoulder at the wheel of the challenges that exist. And I mean, I could start naming people, and it's just a vast number.
Hmm.
It includes people like you, Corey.
Yeah, I wonder if I would be doing this if I don't know I don't know where the fork in there have been many forks in the road since I've been really paying attention to stuff like this. I think it's since I became a Christian in 2000, and I saw different moments when we had an opportunity um, to choose to find our shared values,
Hmm.
to find more moments that didn't require a 9/11
Yeah.
for the entire country to hold hands the way my Aunt Rhoda did with people that were in the city and, helping her across the Brooklyn Bridge that day.
Yeah.
But there haven't, I think a lot of those moments, not only didn't we seize those opportunities, but they were seized for just the opposite.
Hmm.
January 6th, for example, what's happening in LA right now.
Yeah.
We just seem to be seeing the entire world through a very different lens, quite literally.
Yeah.
So man, I hope I'm not raining on your parade because I do think there are moments of of green shoots, right? Of
Hmm.
hopefulness. And those moments are like when we were together in DC. I just like more of those moments uh, at my local pub, when I'm
Yeah.
hanging out with the guys who are wearing the red hats,
Hmm.
that I consider buddies, like genuinely buddies. I'd like more of those moments when I'm just having a dialogue with guys on Facebook, and women on Facebook, the friends that I graduated high school with, for example. Um, and I'm fighting the good fight. I don't know. Are you feeling generally more hopeful, or are you more discouraged, or just does it depend on the day?
I'm feeling extremely aware of the seriousness of the situation that we're in.
Yeah.
Um, s- so I think. it can turn and one way or the other, and it's hard to know. It's not going the right direction.
Yeah.
Um, and high conflict has this way of accelerating and continuing to accelerate into the acceleration in a way that can leave our ability to control it. And so I think that is what um, most disturbs me.
Mm.
So to me, all of us right now need to be doing our best to do what we believe, and stick up for the ideas and the values we believe in, but also to do it with increasing generosity of spirit,
Hmm.
if we can muster it, you know.
Actually, now that I think about it, I should add that one of the reasons that we can be hopeful is that when you started the Village Square, there were not many organizations that had a similar mission as you.
Mhm.
And now, I mean, I went to a Braver Angels event just this Saturday, Model Civic Assembly here in LA, and there are those types of uh, events all around the country.
All
There's
around.
dozens of
Yeah.
organizations. I talked to Kami Akavan, who's engaged in this work just yesterday. So that
One
that
of my
has to be
favorite humans,
He's such an
Tommy.
interesting cat.
He is.
I'm sharing. I think I'm sharing that episode tonight, so folks will get to hear him, and he is just such a treat. His life story too is just so fascinating.
Yeah.
So, but
It's
yeah,
funny because one of the things, I think I told you this before, but one of the things I love about Kami is I've been in so many meetings with him, because we were a part of a Bridging Movement Leadership Council group together, which has been an honor and a privilege. And Kami will be fairly quiet, and then, you know, as the meeting progresses, he says, "Okay," and he starts talking, and you go, "Oh my gosh." He integrated everything. He gets it all.
yeah,
And sometimes he'll tell us that we're heading the wrong direction, and very often I think he's correct. He's just a really wonderful, big-hearted, also very smart
yeah.
man.
All right, so I want to talk about your background in the formation of Village Square, but I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to ask the TPNR question first. I usually ask it at the end. I'm going to ask it first because we're talking about Kami, and Kami gave me a really great answer, but I want you to expound on it. I'll give you the question, and then I'll give you just a sketch
Okay.
of Kami's answer.
Okay.
What do you think each of us can do to be able to share space with, have better conversations with, and even nurture relationships with people across our differences? So that's people who have different backgrounds and beliefs than we do, get their news from different sources than we do. How can we do better at talking politics and religion without killing each other? Or is it even possible? Now, Kami's answer, he had 5 bullet points. One is, and probably the most important one, is listen, listen. And he's right. Just in the last 24 hours when I've been doing this, people, a big epiphany for me in that conversation was that just as there are media outlets that have built a business on the chemical reaction our brains have to anger and
Hmm.
fear stimuli. Like we literally respond to it chemically the way we respond to a hit of crack cocaine. Our brains have a chemical response to being listened to. It's like the love chemical.
Yeah.
So listen, when people feel heard and understood, there's that love chemical that our brains kick into gear. One is listen. Two, seek opposing views. Don't just sit on MSNBC if you're an NBC or Fox News if that's your thing, or you're don't stay in your silo. Seek opposing views. Be generous in interpreting intention. That's a good one, right? It's a good
Yeah.
exhortation, a good
Yeah.
reminder. Think slow thinking slow versus thinking fast.
Mhm.
We're used to like our evolutionary biology. We're used to like we have to think fast if a mammoth is coming at us. We got
Yeah.
but think slow as opposed to reacting and punching or whatever. Think slow. Maybe it's often your second or your third thought is that's the right thought. Thinking slow versus thinking fast, and then superordination, meaning you probably know this. We have common ground already under our feet.
Yeah.
So if I'm talking to an Alabama fan, or what are you again? You're a Florida. So I'm an Auburn
Uh,
fan.
you are who?
Auburn, War
Oh,
Damn Eagle.
Auburn, yeah. Carolina and FSU.
Well, okay. So we're college sports fans.
Yeah.
Superordination, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to
Yeah.
finding reasons to tribalize and tribalize further,
Mhm.
we can superordinate and realize that we have common ground already under our feet. So those are five. Listen, seek opposing views, be generous in interpreting intention, thinking slow versus thinking fast, and superordination. We have common ground already under our
That is
feet.
so great. Well, that makes my point about how great Kami is right there, doesn't it? Um, I, the way that I would answer that question may be more simple. I mean, I agree with everything you said, right? Everything. And I would add to it, you just do it. You
Mm,
just screw in your courage. You give somebody a call and say, "Hey, you want to go have lunch? It's been
yeah.
a while since we've seen each other. I wanted to see how you're doing." And then maybe the other part of it is at first don't talk. To Kami's point about superordination, remember what you have in common, right? Have a conversation about, your kids if they grew up together or whatever. And that's actually that's something called the fast friends exercise. Academia will do that where they learn that people respond better if they sort of create that common ground under their feet before they go on to more controversial topics. But I really think the biggest problem we're having now is we're simply not doing it.
Yeah.
Like we're not putting ourselves in environments like what you described that you're putting yourself in. Most of us aren't. Most of us are just avoiding it. We kind of want it to go away. And our experience has been that if you put yourself in an environment where there are people who don't look or think like you, almost always you leave with some sort of deeper sense of their humanity, with some vague appreciation of who they are. And actually, what happens very often is that you just get less concerned about the things that you disagree on. It goes down your list.
Yeah.
And one of the problems that we're having now is that everything, like political stuff, is at the top of our list,
Yeah.
right? And it's like that's how we're getting very two-dimensional and flat
Right.
instead of multidimensional in the areas that we can have common ground and are just not recognizing it. So I think that that's just like a really important part of it, and it's easy to do. And humans do have amazing superpower once you're in that sort of environment. And if I could wave a magic wand and 30% of Americans were doing that regularly, I think we'd have a different situation on our hands.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, just do it, whether it is, especially if it's in person. The digital ones are harder to do because I'm seeing that Facebook, for example, some of my posts are getting a lot of engagement, and I did not expect this because I'll post a picture of my kids when they were still cute, thinking, oh, this surely I'll get some likes and loves and all this,
Kids,
you know.
puppies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's not so much. I get like five, which, from their aunt in Alabama or whatever. But the ones that are getting a lot of engagement is when I'm simply quoting from the Constitution, just direct passages from the Constitution. The latest one I just quoted directly from the Declaration of Independence.
Hmm?
Now, usually it does have some resonance with a news item, a current news item. So I understand why folks would read it through, and understand, why it resonates with a certain thing. But the folks that are commenting on there and engaging with each other, in some cases, their only connection is me. That they both happen to know me. But one is from Manalapan, New Jersey, where I went to high school, and one is from Southern California. One might be connected to Lisa in some way and is, from the Southeast.
Yeah.
So there's all different people from all different worlds. Some might be from my church friends, some might be from my entertainment industry friends. And there's there isn't a ton of grace. There isn't a ton of being generous in interpreting
Yeah.
intention. So I think to your point, like just do it, get out there, get to go to the Bible study, go to the softball game, go to the protest. Like I'm going to this thing, the No Kings thing, on Saturday in our town. But I also go to the local pub. I'm going to a business networking meeting later tonight.
Yeah.
So just get out there because, as you say, it's harder to hate people up close, right? So
Yep. And in fact, the other thing that you see up close is good intentions.
yeah,
To Kami's other point
yeah,
is interpret and be generous when you interpret intentionality. Well, when you see it close up, you realize that they don't hate whatever. They really do believe that X that's different than what you believe. And so when you see people's good intentions, I think that it softens your heart towards what's going on. And frankly, I mean, I think there are a lot of people who are winning office and making a lot of money, flipping our lizard brains into
yeah.
gear. And so we're pretty vulnerable to that when we don't have anybody in our lives that we can sort of say, hey, wait a minute, I know so and so, and I think they're wrong, but they're good people. My husband has a friend that, because of what I do, they play basketball together, and they both each scratch their head about the other's politics. And so they started having lunch, and
Oh,
they have lunch a couple times a month. Sometimes their lunches will be like 3 hours.
that's awesome.
And those two really talk about stuff.
Mhm.
And then they sort of, roll on and talk basketball.
Well, I heard your husband on the phone, and he could talk for about 15 minutes alone on the knobs on the drawers in the kitchen. So he can really deliberate, even when it's knobs on the kitchen drawers. So
You did. I forgot about that conversation. Oh my
we were trying to
God.
park or something like that, and you're like, "Okay,
Yes.
honey, you just
Yes.
make a decision. I gotta tell Corey where to go."
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. Okay. So do tell us. So one little tidbit about the Village Square that I love, for some reason, it just tickles me, is it was named by former U.S. Senator Olympia Snowe as one of the 8 organizations to support if you're concerned about the deepening partisan divide. How did that come on Senator Snow's radar?
I think it was through, the sort of the origin story of the Village Square is that I was running a reelection campaign for a local city commissioner. And which I did one campaign, that's it.
Mm.
It's not me. Um, but at the time, I got to see the network of people around him. And he had great relationships with a lot of people he disagreed with.
Mhm.
And that's when, I started saying, hey, it shouldn't be just 5 people who are hanging out having this great conversation. It should be 500. And so it was his relationship. Actually, he ended up being um, the ambassador to Portugal during Obama's presidential tenure. And Ambassador Alan Katz. Anyway, I think that uh, Alan and Olympia knew each other. And so that was the original she learned about us. Of course, at the time, it's been a bunch of years. And at the time, there may have been, I don't know, 20 organizations. So
Yeah.
I think the competition wasn't quite so fierce. Right now, there's a lot,
Okay.
which is good.
So what were some? So you know what I was that I haven't learned from you yet is how you. It's not easy even now putting a 501(c)(3) together. How were you able to know how to do that? How did you do it? How did you raise the initial chunk of funds that you needed to do some of those cool events that you started with? How did you do all that?
I definitely was a novice. So I just put one foot in front of the other, just figured out one thing and then the other and then the other. And I do actually, when people ask me about starting a nonprofit, I recommend that they don't, because it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of work to do all the things that you have to do. And some of my tales of the beginning of the organization is I think that my first annual income, and now this has been 18 years ago or 19 years ago, was $12,000 a year. And
Okay.
it was a full-time job. Um, and to get a speaker that I really wanted, I gave up my salary for 1 month. I just
Wow.
did it because I really wanted them, and paid them a fee. Somebody later found out that I had done it, and they said, "Why didn't you tell us?" And, so you did what I did what you do when you feel really passionately about the need to have something happen. And I have certainly felt this for a very long time. I have felt a deep disquiet accelerating into semi-panic, about um, the 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 health of our civic life
Mm.
for a long time. And I guess God, I believe this idea that our framers had is extraordinary. It's extraordinary. I really buy into that. I grew up in the suburbs of DC. I am a patriot. I think that the concept the concepts that we were built on to me are the best ideas that existed in human history. And how do a diverse group of people build a civilization together? And maybe more fundamentally, and again, going back to Kami's list,
Yeah.
that we have to engage, we have to travel with people who don't agree with us because they see things we don't. You get smarter when you learn, when you find, talk to other people. And so to me, the genius of basing a country around the concept that, that the disagreement is in many ways what fuels
Yeah.
things. And I think that in our deteriorating environment, that is actually the thing that we most have forgotten and at incredible peril to our future.
You know, one of my favorite sentences in the English language is the First Amendment. And the First Amendment, I think, illustrates the very point that you're talking about because you don't, without disagreement in that room, whether it was in 1776 for the Declaration of Independence, or later on 1887 for the Constitution, ratifying the Constitution, you don't get a sentence like Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Right?
Yeah.
You get those two halves
Yes.
of the same concept, but they're important to hold each other up. And you know full well the people who were in that room helping to craft that idea, that's it, that resulted directly from those arguments
Yes.
in that room, right?
Yes. Yes. And and I I don't know if we're going to be okay if we forget the power of that idea. I mean, and I think we look around and we take so many things for granted. Um, but I mean, well, gosh, our friend and hero John Roush
Yeah.
um wrote the most extraordinary book basically about this idea
The
in the
Constitution of
Constitution of
Knowledge.
Knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah. That we've structured our institutions to allow for that a pull and tug around, by definition, in by definition, flawed human reason.
Mm.
And we put ourselves in proximity in the jury system, in the academy with science, where we have our ideas and then we say, okay, punch at them a little bit. Are they right? Where are they wrong here and there? And then a government that has different branches that push and pull and tug, and the gifts. We are not any endeavor is not a perfect one. But the gifts that being so hewed to that idea has brought us over our almost 250 years is extraordinary.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, to your point, the one of the one of the posts I made was pieces of the very First Amendment. Um, the it wasn't the entire thing. I just I included the right of the people peaceably to assemble, um, and everyone on the thread. It's clear that there was a bunch of Trump supporters, and the first comments I got were actually um, pictures of people that were committing violence and looting and all kinds of nonsense. And it was my Trump a couple different Trump supporting friends that yes, real peaceable, huh, in LA. So that was their immediate reaction. But even the folks who support peaceful protest were saying, were agreeing, yes, the peaceable part is really important. I don't think there was a single person on this thread, and I know there are people out there that are excusing it or diminishing the violence, but everybody on this thread was in agreement that yes, the peaceful part was important, but it was almost like the folks that are Trump supporters versus not Trump supporters still felt the need to argue it. Like, hey guys, I don't know if you realize this, but you're agreeing on this thing, okay? And
Yeah.
yet you're fighting about agreeing about. Like, I don't know, you still want to fight about it. I don't understand. But the serious question. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I just really think that one of the things that we are underestimating is the power of human groupishness.
Mm,
We Groups are really powerful in our lives. When we become a part of a group, it gives us a lot of things, um, but it also requires a lot of us.
mm.
And the whole thing about how homogenous groups grow more extreme in the direction of the majority view. It's us trying to be
Oh,
a member of our groups in good standing.
right.
And so I think that, yeah, I was thinking of another example. To me, there's just, if you start watching the dynamics of what happens in our politics through a groupish lens.
Yeah.
So like what happened today in LA, and you start seeing how everybody is taking the same event that happened, focusing on different things differentially, and hewing to their group uh, explanation. And then we really convince ourselves that we completely understand it. And yet there's, the John Stuart Mill thing that we are right in what we affirm, but wrong in what we deny. So we have blind spots,
Mm,
right? We may have this great argument about why this, and this, but very often we're not thinking of something that should be sort of part of the conversation, which is why heterogeneous groups are what brings you good reason, solutions to problems. And we have to, in this digital age where it's just too easy to find our birds of a feather, we have to have these times where we step out of our groupishness.
yeah.
It's gonna be okay. Like Bob Putnam,
Yeah.
Bob,
Bob.
um, uh, uh, it calls it bonding social capital and bridging social capital. And there's bonding social capital is great, right? But but you have to have some bridging social capital in your life too.
Yeah. So we've talked about this before, but I'd love to hear if you've learned anything new about why we're this way, and what's been happening to exacerbate some of these problems. I just read a book called "Tribalism is Dumb." It was kind of a pithy,
Oh, I love
witty
that.
book. Yeah, Andrew Heaton, who was also friends with Roush, actually. He and he talks a lot about evolutionary, um, uh, the psychological evolutionary psychology, and why we're tribal.
Mhm.
He brings up that 150 number that we talked about
Dunbar's
last
number,
time.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But we need a group for our very survival, and some of
Right.
that wiring hasn't left us. So we need to identify, and a lot of the things that we're doing are very. You can look back on hominids, and Homo sapiens, and understand why that wiring had been in us and is still in us. But I'm wondering where you think the divisiveness comes from, and what's been making it worse over the last few decades.
Uh, I mean, I think that one of my personal opinions is just that modern civilization is leaving us lonely and isolated. More than, I mean, we can go anywhere, live anywhere. We often live way far away from our families of origin. Um, we spend less time in groups in the real world. We spend more time um, digitally. And so we're sort of forced into digital groups. I mean, that we're finding our identity and our the sort of the rush of the electronic M&Ms in online groupishness.
Yeah.
And so until I mean, in some ways it's simpler, right? We don't, you're online. You don't have to, like, I don't know, help people out who are having a crisis who from online necessarily. And so I think more of us are leading more isolated lives, more lives that are and then by virtue of that, we don't have as much of the opportunity to really feel like we have found a space. I also think I want to give a shout out to conservatives who I think have a little bit more of a grasp on the importance of groups in human life. And I think there's more. Uh, I think sort of the liberal elite, educated elite, and I mean lowercase liberal kind of. Um, we're just pretty independent and a little bit more like cats. Kind of got our thing going, right? And I think that more conservatives sort of find their lives in smaller groups, closer to home, more proximate, and understand the importance of that. And I do think that it's important.
Yeah, yeah. So you recognize this again 18, 19 years ago when you formed the Village Square, um, and that a lot of the Village Square has been doing these events, right? I talk about how you shut down downtown Tallahassee and set up 100 coffee tables. But tell us about some of those early events. What spurred the idea? How you engineered them? What your goal was? Tell us a little bit about those events.
Well, I kind of had I had it ish. I wouldn't claim to have really understood this. It sort of unfolded before me in many ways. And in fact, the name, the Village Square, is from the Einstein quote, "To the Village Square, we must carry the facts of atomic energy. From there must come America's voice." And so my first premise really was, oh my gosh, we've got to create a space where we are seeking and understanding what is true.
Yeah,
And so it was very kind of fact driven at first for me. And I started maybe kind of learning some lessons along the way. And first learned that it was way more about people and relationships between people than it was about facts.
yeah,
Um, and so we sort of and somewhere along the way we started reading John Haidt's work. Um, and and that started kind of informing like I think we were becoming intuitionists
yeah,
like John um writes about, but I don't think we had like any academic basis for thinking that. We were seeing how humans behaved, including ourselves, and starting to make some assumptions about how you bring a group of people who are diverse together, and then his academic work supported it. So we set off in the wrong direction at first, I think, uh,
Mm.
and then we
Oh,
kind of righted the ship.
okay. In what way was it the wrong direction?
Um, it- I think that I think we were being rationalist, which is humans will make rational decisions if only they know what the facts are. And if I were to be truly honest, I think somewhere down deep in my core, I think admitting to myself um, that I probably thought they'll agree with me once we actually have a conversation about what's factually true.
Right.
And I don't believe that anymore. I believe that a group of people well constituted that really is diverse and is seeking, has an institution to preserve, like the legal system, um, like the academy and science. Um, I think that we are capable of finding fact that way, but any individual human being is pretty incapable of it because we make decisions in an intuitionist way, not a rational way. And
Yeah.
I think I used to think I was rational. I know I'm not now.
Interesting. That's interesting. Yeah. And it's also even if we can reckon with a fact, it might not necessarily be the most prominent color in the picture that we're taking in,
Yeah.
right? Or it might not jump out to me the same way that I was just having this conversation this morning with actually a friend from high school, and he hasn't actually come out and said it, but I'm pretty sure he voted for Trump. But he's taking me to task because I'm very vociferous anti-Trump, you know. But he's taken me to task because I admitted, listen, I got a lot wrong leading up to the election. Right after the election, I came out and said, listen, I got a lot wrong about what I saw in this election. One of which was I thought a lot of us could agree that being upright, moral person is one of our top shared priorities. That not lying, not cheating, not treating people, just with meanness, brazenly with meanness, like certain things. In Christianity, we might call it the fruit of the spirit. That we could agree the fruit of the spirit is a good thing, and the anti-fruit of the spirit, that comes before that in the Bible is that those are not virtues.
Mhm.
But what I remembered was that, okay, so my buddy might still think those things are important, but what was compelling him to vote a certain way could have been other issues. Immigration, for example, might have been a bigger issue for him. Crime, or how he was perceiving the economy, how the economy was affecting him, might have been even more important than one particular candidate's moral framework, right? So I realized that I was wrong, that we still basically agreed on the same facts. Like he wouldn't say that, Donald Trump is this upstanding guy and moral leader, but he just said, no, this stuff is more important to me. So
Yeah.
I can get that. I can get my head around that.
Well, and I
So
also think that the model that the metaphor that John uses in his book is that the mind is divided like a rider on an elephant, and the elephant's job is the rider isn't the boss. The elephant essentially is the boss, and the rider is sort of there to explain what the elephant did, like the press secretary explains what the president does.
that's
So
interesting.
the
Yeah.
press secretary isn't going to jump out there and say, "Oh yeah, he messed up."
It,
It's never going to happen, right? It's
yeah.
always like a post hoc rationalization for the behavior.
Yeah.
And
So
so yeah,
this is just a side note, but it wasn't Haidt's follow-up book supposed to be out by now, or did he just get so busy with the anxious generation?
he got so busy with Anxious Generation and saw it as being so incredibly important
Yeah.
that he put off the follow-up book,
Oh man.
which
I
was
want
like
to.
the biggest cliffhanger ever
I
for
know,
me
seriously.
because the righteous mind, like, changed my life and my work and everything about how I see things. And so, yeah, I guess we'll just have to wait a little
Yeah.
longer.
Yeah. So, what was the idea for the God Squad?
Um, so one of the things we saw in the first year of our programming is that we were attracting a lot more liberals and conservatives to our dinner events. And we wanted to change that. And I actually ran into Tallahassee is the kind of place that yeah, you need to hang with us here, Corey. We need to make that happen. It's the kind of place that we were. I was eating breakfast, a business breakfast, and I ran into the my own priest at my Episcopal church, and the rabbi who I also knew well, and they were kind of talking about doing something like God Squad, and I said, "Oh, we are really wanting to do that." So I just sat down at their table, and
Oh,
that's where it was born. And and it wasn't called God Squad then. And actually, at first we called it Faith Food Friday, and then we transitioned to God Squad because we had some programs on other nights. And
food being the key word there.
it,
The
it
big.
always is for us. Breaking bread is pretty key to who we are and what we think works. Um, and uh, and we were off to the races, and we got this amazing group of pastors who could not possibly disagree more with each other. And then we made sure they became friends. The ones that weren't friends yet became
Yeah.
friends. And that, in my heart, that's really the favorite thing that we do. Just some of the moments of joy and insight and sadness and closeness, and it's just a beautiful thing to have a group of pastors who, again, lead churches that really see things differently, um, grow those kind of relationships. It's
Yeah,
great.
yeah. I have them in my ears for the last, I forget how many years we've been working together now, but having, you know, having like having the different characters that show up repeatedly, I feel like they're my friends. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
they don't
We
know
need to
me at
get you
all
here
yet.
so that, yeah, so that they are your friends.
Oh, that'd be
Have I ever
nice.
told you the Father Tim story?
What's that?
About so when he first started, the way that we do God Squad is, well, we invite like guest God Squad
Yeah,
members to do a program or two. And but then we're always keeping our eye out for the person that we want to invite to be a permanent member of the God Squad.
yeah.
And so we invited Father Tim to be a guest, and he was. I don't even remember the conversation that we were having, but at a certain point in time, again, he's in his collar. He's kind of a young,
Yeah.
very cool
Yeah.
priest, and he said, "Well, I don't have any children." And he sort of paused. He's got good comic timing. He paused, and the whole room goes, "Ah!"
Yeah.
Pause, pause, pause. I mean, that I know of. And it was the room just went up in laughter, and we were going, "Okay, he's going to be a permanent one. We're gonna ask him permanently."
Yeah, yeah. Some good people, Letitia and Pastor Joe, and yeah, it's just and it's a the rabbi and the rabbi I am kind of ambivalent about just because he's closest to home, you know. I find myself starting to yell at him as if I was yelling at my dad. Like, could you do something about your bodily noises, pops? Like, I don't know. Not that he. Anyway, yeah, just because I recognize that voice it hits a certain chord in my head. So how do you convince people from different sides of an issue to come out to your events?
Um, it's weird. And when things are going well, um, we really feel like we're on a roll. But when things are kind of there's every once in a while things get a little challenging, and you kind of feel like everybody hates you on both sides of the aisle, kind of like, right?
That's
And then
so
I
true.
don't know if that means we're doing the right thing, but it really can be hard. I do think that the biggest problem we have right now is we're just not showing up to be with each other. And so it has gotten, in this environment, it's gotten increasingly challenging to get people in the room. It's funny because at the beginning, we had to convince people there was a problem, right? So we were spending a lot of time. Well, we really are concerned that blah and blah and blah. Now we don't have to convince anyone. Looking for a silver lining, we don't have to convince anyone we've got a problem. But one would think if we were being really rational, that the more people understood it's a problem, the more they would pile into the rooms and engage in the things to make it better. But we humans are complicated and we don't necessarily want to do some of those things. And there's a lot of avoidance, a lot of, and frankly, as the problem has gotten worse, I think there's more avoidance. So it's like we're always trying to say to everybody across every divide, you are welcome here.
Hmm.
And we do that by being thoughtful about what we invite people to do, by paying attention to the language that we use to do
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Um, and also by having, I mean, we have a board of directors that is very politically diverse. And so, we're constantly putting people from different backgrounds in front
yeah.
of our audience to say, you are welcome here.
Um, how, I don't know if you're able to answer this, but as I've watched this administration uh, really challenge the balance between the Article 1 versus Article 2 powers, in particular the power of the purse, I know that that affects you and your organization very directly, in particular the National Endowment for the Humanities. How have you been able to navigate during this really, really uncertain time?
Yeah. So, Florida Humanities and all of the state humanities councils um, are are existentially challenged by what has transpired with NEH funding being cut, and I think that people don't really know what humanities councils do in their state. And it's almost like we're all sort of part of a civilization that humanities councils helped build.
Hmm.
They're in there, you're almost certain to have been to an event that was sponsored or hosted by a humanities council. If you care about museums and learning and exhibits, and you've crossed paths with them. And for us here in Tallahassee, our state humanities council is the Florida Humanities Council, and they are extraordinary. And I cannot tell, we have 67 counties. They have relationships with people in all 67 of the counties. And when I think about the kind of relationship that we have with them, I mean, over the years, they've sponsored, co-sponsored the 60th anniversary of lunch counter sit-ins, 100th anniversary
Oh, wow.
celebration of Jackie Robinson's birthday, because
Wow.
he was
Yeah.
born about 15 miles north of here. Um, the our Unum series. Our Unum series is 5 years of talking to people like Bob Putnam. Bob.
Bob, I
Going
love
back
it.
to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, um, John Haidt, John Roush, um, Amanda Ripley, Danielle Allen,
Oh, she was
Ted,
great.
great, Ted Johnson. These just luminaries that we get to talk to.
Yeah.
One of my recent favorites is Tim Urban, and if you haven't had him as a guest, Corey, you got to do it.
How do
Um,
you get your guests on? I haven't had this like kind of geeky podcasty like programming. How do you get like I just basically beg.
I beg to. I do exactly the same thing. In fact, we invited John Roush many moons ago to speak on his book, the Kindly Inquisitors is what
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
called. And so it's about he was one of the first people who was concerned about saw and was concerned about the campus culture that turned into what we now call woke. Um, and anyway, so we invited him to come to Tallahassee, and the way that I convinced him to do it, I kid you not, is he needed to have a meeting in Gainesville, 2.5 hours away. And so I volunteered to pick him up in Gainesville and drive him from his meeting to Tallahassee, um, to uh, to do the event.
Oh,
And
wow.
and he said yes.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome.
and I had the unmitigated nerve to ask John Haidt really early on if he could come to town. So I'm always sort of horse swapping,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I horse swap for the Unum events as well. So it's amazing. It's worked pretty well. And
Um,
you know what? Again, I do think the silver lining here is that, I mean, think of the people who are giving their time and talent to the challenge we have, and that we get to hang out with them and meet them. And very often they say yes just because it matters to them.
yeah. Yeah, I considered the possibility of changing the title of the program pretty early on. And the first guest with any sort of national presence is one of the hosts on POTUS, the Sirius XM radio channel, Julie Mason. And I told her I was thinking about changing it like to Purple District or something like that. And she said, "Oh, no, 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 no," because it's such a long, clumsy title. She said, "No, no, no, that it works in your favor. You got to keep it."
Yeah,
And
yeah, I agree. I'm glad you didn't.
just recently, I had EJ Dion on the show, and he said the
Look
same
at
thing.
you. How'd
Yeah,
you
yeah,
get EJ Dion?
yeah. We got EJ Dion, and that was like again, I get so freaking nervous before these because I've been reading his work, and I've been watching him on TV for at least 25 years, right? And reading his column, and so nervous. But then once he's on, he's just like chilling out. We're just having a conversation. It's great. He made it so easy. But he said, "No, I saw the title of your show, and I couldn't wait to come on." Of course, Roush did work behind the scenes very much in my favor because they're at the Brookings together.
Yeah.
But the other one that I was surprised the title made a difference was Bishop Marion Edgar Buddy. She came on the show as well, right within weeks after she made
Hmm.
the homily at the National Cathedral, and she said it was the title. She's like, "We need more of that."
Yep.
So it was
Yeah.
very
I think
cool.
I think that, yeah, you can't change that title. That
So,
name.
okay, a couple of quick questions. One is, I, th if I understand it correctly, one of, if not your favorite spot in DC is National Portrait Gallery. If I'm right, why is that?
Oh, it is. Whew, why is it? So it's like 10 minutes, 10-minute walk from where my daughter lives.
Oh, so that,
And
yeah, that helps.
and and it's kind of, they call it kind of the DC Residence Museum because it's off the mall.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to know where it is. And it's right there in Chinatown. So there's like all sorts of places, great places to eat there. And they've got this magical atrium that just the ceiling goes up to the sky.
Yeah.
And it's certain times a year there'll be crazy things going on there sometimes. Like I stumbled in on an Earth Day celebration. There were probably like 800 children, um, and um, and face paints and all sorts of stuff, music going on. There have been a few times that they've been setting up for. I was there when they were setting up for a very fancy Google party,
Right.
and I mean, beautiful glassware, Google projected on the wall, and and actually, one of the things I like best about it is all this is always happening. It really is a center of gathering for citizens in all of the uniqueness of who we are.
Hmm.
And the citizens are always welcome. So literally, they're putting these fancy schmoozy couches out for the evening big event, and you can go sit on them and sit and do your work
Yeah.
as long as you
Yeah.
don't start eating their food. Um, it's just got this. To me, it feels like a democracy. It's all the people coming off the street, and then two of the best parts about it. One is you and I did the presidential portraits. So I mean, they have these amazing exhibits that come, but then they have this permanent, those are the official presidential portraits of all the presidents of the United States. And I just find that so compelling. And I will go in there, most days that I'm there to work 5, 6, 7 hours, I'll take a break sometime and just kind of meander through the presidential portraits. Again, to me, it's part of our DNA, and I feel very connected to it. But there's just so much humanness to it. But then the other great thing about it is if you hang out there long enough, and again, you can, because it's very democratized, you can get free internet there all the time. You can work as much as you want. You can sneak a snack in and have a snack. They've got like a great place that you can actually even go and get a glass of wine if you are so inspired. Uh, but if you hang out there long enough, you'll see that people get married there.
Mm.
And they can't, bring a huge wedding party. I think it's, I don't know what the limit is, but it's something like 20 people maybe that you can bring. So the
Okay.
people come, the bride and the groom, a couple of parents and a minister, or a small wedding party. And they're having this happen, Corey, and everybody is still
Doing their
hanging
thing.
out, doing their thing, studying. I don't know. It just feels like America to me. America at our best and most wonderful.
Yeah. That's yeah, to your point, when we were in the exhibits displaying the president's portraits, it does tell a story about what each president chose.
Hmm.
It tells a story about the artists that they chose.
It
It
does.
tells so much, and then through each president, it tells a story about our country and the democracy, that chose those presidents, or the Democratic Republican, I should say. But also something cool to your point about we see democracy happening. When we were there were a couple different student groups that were in that gallery as well, and you could see how different. There were plenty of students that were hanging back and on their phones and doing junior high school or high school kid things. But there were a couple kids that were engaging with different portraits in different ways, and they were kind of working it out. And like one is more of
Yeah.
a this fan of this president, one's more a fan of that president, and it was interesting to see the kids encountering the portraits and then engaging with each other on what they were taking in. So
Yeah. Yeah, I forgot about the school groups. They're great too. And it's just this just constant parade of diverse humanity.
yeah,
Oh, and also they have these little, at certain times a year, they have, the little fountains that are basically just a flat, big, huge, long thing of water right in the middle of the atrium. And so the kids will play in them, and the kids are welcome to play in it. And they'll be running around and jumping up and down. And again, you're sitting right next to them, and they're splashing your laptop, and
Yeah.
it's that sort of accumulation of humanity. And it's funny because I think that what you and I had a little exchange about the portrait galleries in the news,
Yeah.
um, and I think the thing that makes me so sad is I think our differences, the points of disagreement like that the current administration has with, say, how the portrait gallery has chosen to, do certain things. I think that if there were really good-hearted interaction around that,
Yeah.
it would make us all better, right? Like it feels like we're in a moment where our differences could be making us better, but instead they're making us worse.
Right.
It's like we're just going to go in and Bigfoot everything, and people don't listen in that kind of environment, right? I mean, that's not going to, it's just going to make the equal and opposite reaction punch back, harder, and it accelerates our inability to hear and understand
Yeah.
each other, where we should just be, it should be an honest wrestling. There should be some good meetings happening.
Yeah. I wonder if the way that the administration is attacking anything DEI, even when there's no there, right? Firing the longtime head of the Library of Congress, because she happens to be African American. Um,
And that's another place I love that's right up the street from the Portrait Gallery.
yeah.
And it's extraordinary to be in that building with the Constitution and the low lights and
Yeah.
the reverence for who, and they lower the Constitution every night into the ground. Is
Yeah.
that not just amazing?
Yeah. It's
And
awesome.
so what are we, yeah, why are we doing that? That's not partisan.
But I wonder if more folks would be open to some of the critiques that someone like Yasha Monk made in his 2023 book, The Identity Trap. He met with a lot of pushback um, from other left-leaning academics. But now I wonder if his arguments are going to be more embraced, specifically because of the extreme, pointed, kind of, I don't know, unproductive way that the administration is going about it. That I don't, or to your point, like, no, we can't deal with any of that, right? I don't know. I don't
I,
know how
yeah.
this plays out.
And I mean the bad thinking happens on whichever side you're on if all you're talking to is people you agree with.
Yeah,
Because we've got to be able to, we have to understand reality of our world. It's a group endeavor, right?
yeah,
It's not we need each other. We
yeah.
really need each other.
Or we're not doing anything if the only people that we're talking to are folks who are so extremely divided, or the worst examples. If, for example, the only person, say they're one of my Trump supporting friends who supports the actions he's taken in LA, and the only people from the other side that they're talking to are the ones who are trying to justify violence, for example.
Yeah,
But those are not good engagements. But Yasha Monk, what he did so well in that book, and what EJ Dionne has done so well for his whole career, is articulating the best arguments before he engages with them.
right.
In his own columns, he'll do that, where he'll say, "My understanding of what my colleague so and so is trying to say," and he gives a really good, robust summary of
Yeah.
the best arguments before he either critiques it or engages with it in any way. And that, I feel like, it's not, maybe it's not as sexy. Maybe it just doesn't get as good ratings. But to me, I don't know. To me, it's sexy. You know?
It is. I think the ideas are sexy. Like that when the moments when you kind of go, you have this realization of something you didn't already know,
Yeah.
and you kind of go, oh,
I never thought of it that way.
yes, that should be a book.
That should be a book.
Um,
Yeah, that should be a book.
so yeah, I mean, it's an amazing moment. I learned so much from people who don't agree with me, and yeah, to me, it's just really, it's we're in a sad moment.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to ask you one more question that I asked. This isn't a regular question of mine, but I asked it when you were the guest of your own show, the Village Squarecast, and I thought it was fun, and I want to see if your answer changes from the last time I asked it of you. If citizens from a far-off universe were to come to Earth and consider the possibility that the human species was too much trouble and needed to be exterminated, how would you make the case for humanity? You can use rhetorical arguments, sketches from our history, cultural artifacts, theological premises, anything you like.
Oh, are you going to give me a hint of what I said before?
Well, one thing you said was like that you liked my answer better, but I'm not going to tell you what my answer.
I think I would direct them to the extraordinary art, whether it's physical, I mean, whether it's a painting or whether it's a building or a a song. The humans have done amazing things. We are capable of such extraordinary beauty.
Yeah.
And gosh, I do see it all the time. We just had a meeting last night. It's not art, but it was beauty in human beings. Like it was just amazing. It was like I like being with these amazing human beings. So I think I would think through I would have a list of extraordinary things that humans have built and made.
Mm.
What was your answer before?
It was right along those lines.
Was
It
it?
was just play Louis Armstrong doing a live rendition of La Vie en Rose.
Yeah, that's pretty great.
Yeah, or
Yeah,
something
you,
along,
you
but
can't exterminate a species that is
that
capable of that kind of beauty.
exactly. And yeah, but to your point, it's any great art, I think, gives us a touch of the transcendent.
I think so too.
So that's a good place to start. Do you have any questions for me?
Yes, I'm actually going to, whatever it is that you say that you recommend I read, I'm going to go read it. What,
Oh,
at this moment, what should I read or, any of your listeners read if they want to be in a different place, learn a thing that we need to learn right now? Maybe it's that we just need to take a little time out and and read something funny. Like
yeah, yeah.
tribes are stupid. Is that what you called it? Dumb.
Tribalism is dumb. Yeah.
Tribalism is dumb.
That's a
We could
good
do
one
that.
because you get a lot of really, he did a lot of great research, but he's a stand-up comedian by trade, but also really, really spent a lot of time digging into the science,
Mhm.
really digging into, it just did, I could tell it took him 7, 8 years to write, and I could tell why, because he really did his homework
Yeah,
before he put it out there. And then he put his I don't know, wit is such a rare art these days, and he just did it
it
so
is.
well.
So is that my next read?
It could be. It could be. I think that, you know, um, who was it? Dumais, who reminded us in one of her recent Substacks um, that going to the museum is really important in a time like now. So in terms of reading, I think of Wendell Berry. If you haven't read his fiction, definitely worth a read.
I have not.
But a good introduction if you're in, even if you're not into poetry, maybe a good introduction to poetry is any of his collections of poetry, in particular his collection, his Sabbath collection. And just sit with it. Just give yourself 10 minutes even just to read it slow, to really take it in, drink it in. But his series, I forget the name of the town, but it's an imaginary town in Kentucky. And he has a whole series of books where he traces the life stories of characters from this town going back to the mid 1800s on through the present.
Wow.
And it's great. It's great. I read it at a time when I needed to remember that there is an arc to every life. That we will get through this, and sometimes we'll get through it with scars, but we'll get through it nonetheless. So that's a good one. Marilyn Robinson has a similar tone in a lot of her stuff. If you're looking for fiction, and John Rausch's last book was really helpful because talk about like he gives certain illustrations of how democracy can be done,
Yeah.
like the Mormon Church in Utah working with the LGBTQ
Oh,
community.
oh, yeah. I happen to know directly that about the work that is being done there in Utah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in terms of nonfiction, just pull anything that Roush has written, you know.
I
So,
couldn't agree with you more on that.
yeah,
And I look forward to reading some Wendell Berry. That sounds great.
yeah. I'm actually going to read some Anne Rice, but not her vampire. She had at least three books where she was giving imaginary moments in Jesus's life that aren't accounted for in the Gospels. So I'm curious to see how she imagined that. So yeah,
Fascinating.
so I'm gonna look for a couple of those myself. But anyway, we covered a lot. You're gonna get to tell us how we can find you in Village Square and all that. But in terms of subjects, is there anything important that we haven't discussed that you'd like to add?
Do you think you could have a podcast where you and I just talked for a couple hours every week? Because I'd really like an excuse to be able to talk with you for a couple hours a week. I think I would feel better. I think I'd feel better. But
It'd be
no,
interesting to
I
see if we'd get a following and what that would be like, because
yes, or maybe we get an unfollowing.
that's right. A lot of
Like,
people start
oh,
unfollowing us.
oh,
Yeah.
I've had enough of these people.
Yeah, yeah. So I have I'm doing so leave it to me to figure out how to inject what we're doing, our missions into just everything. So I a buddy of mine, very accomplished broadcaster. He started out in sports and then became the main anchor for CBS News in LA. Um and he and I are
Cool.
very dear friends, and we're starting a sports show together. We can't just do a sports show. It's East versus West sports, right? Because he's an LA guy, I'm a New
So
York guy, so we
great.
have to have the kind of rivalry thing going there. So yeah, that'll be a fun one
That's
too.
pretty fun. Gosh,
Yeah,
how do you have time to do that, Corey?
I
You
don't.
don't. It's very ill-advised, isn't it?
It's crazy, but we've both done crazy things, and I'm sure 5 years from now, I'll look back on it and say, if I had it to do over again, I wouldn't have done it, but yeah, I'm going to do it anyway,
Eh,
you know?
I don't know. I don't know. You might feel differently.
Yeah. Or actually, I'm glad. I'm sure that 5 years from now, I'm going to say I'm glad that we did it. But if I knew what I had to overcome in order to do it, I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, that's like me saying don't start a 501(c)(3).
Yeah. So how can we follow Village Square? How can we find more information about you and your organization and all the great work that you're doing?
So go online to villagesquare.us where you can find links to almost all the programs we've ever done. So we keep it up there because we want to encourage other communities to do something like what we're doing. And so if you're interested in starting a Village Square, just give me a call or email me, liz@villagesquare.us. And you can listen to Village Squarecast with our extraordinary facilitator and host, Corey Nathan,
Thank you.
wherever you get your podcasts. And you know, those also represent what we're doing in real life between people face to face here.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, so many of those series are just so much fun. Catch a God Squad series, catch an Unum series. You'll get the Robert Putnam episode. You'll get a John Roush episode. You'll get a Monty Guzman episode. And I call them characters because they're so endearing. Every one on the God Squad is
They
so
really
much fun.
are. Yeah,
So good
they are.
stuff. Well, it's great hanging out with you, Liz. Good to see you
Oh,
again.
it's just so much fun. This is it. I just love being with you,
But
Corey.
being in DC kind of spoiled me. You got to do it in person sooner rather
Yeah,
than
I was
later.
gonna say, where should we be next in the world?
You're all welcome out to LA. Me and Kami
I
are we're conniving right now. We're we're conspiring, I should say, to
I,
make it
I
happen.
think that's a great idea. I'm
Yeah.
I'm gonna pack my bags whether you like it or not.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, thank you. It's great to see you. And as always, if you dig what we're doing here, remember to follow the show, write that review, and now you can watch these conversations on YouTube. It's youtube.com/at politics and religion. That's my buddy MJ. MJ's doing all the editing for us for the YouTube channel. He's freaking awesome. And I am at Corey Nathan, at COREYS as in Scott, actually. It's not Sam. My middle name's Scott. Anyway, COREYS as in Sam, NATHAN. At Corey S. Nathan on all the socials as well as on Substack. Now go talk some politics and religion with gentleness and respect, and have a great week.